Okay, we are now at red. Ha! I love it when I goof around with myself. I had to remember what I was coming back here for. I gotta go back there and get the, what now? So it will be probably, I mean, some of it depends on how long people talk, but it will be, I know, I can try to keep it down 10. There we are. Okay. Oh, you know, it's okay. Is the microphone on? Are we ready? Are we streaming? Welcome to New Song Episcopal Church, wherever it is that you are coming from. So that is super exciting. I bet there's nobody watching, though. Oh, wait a minute. Is somebody coming up? I don't want to start before we're all here. You know what? Thank you for staying. I know, like, it's a long day, and then it's longer, so thank you for staying. Some of you might feel forced to stay because you're also on the vestry. How many of you is that? Yeah, a couple of you. Anyway, great. You had to stay anyway to do the tech, so thank you. We're going to go ahead and start with prayer, and it's just going to be the diocesan prayer that I handed out. Let us pray. Holy God of abundance and life, we thank you for the gift of the Episcopal Church and the Diocese of Iowa, in which we live out your call. Stretch our minds and the capacity of our hearts as we learn and grow into the community of disciples that you dream of. Send your Holy Spirit to guide us as we seek your plan for the future of this diocese. Enliven our faith as we learn to take risks in following Jesus. Strengthen us as one church, one diocese, united in Christ's love, and bring us in joy to the day when we step out of the boat and dance on the water. In the name of Jesus, who calls us. Amen. You may.
There was a lot of salad left. This is not dressed, but I put some in little bags, and I'll leave it here on your way out.
You know, Emily is missing her purse, too. It was right next to us. And I wonder if someone picked it up by accident.
What does it look like?
It's turquoise, and it looks like a little bit of a bag. Green. Yeah, I remember seeing it. Yeah. All right. Well, that's where I will have to go find it.
And did you have it downstairs?
Yeah.
You had it downstairs, so we don't need to look for it up here.
Somebody was looking for the owner of a purse downstairs.
See, those two people ought to get together.
That's right. You don't know who that was, though, John. You don't know who that was.
But it's a good sign if somebody was doing that, right? That somebody has found it.
It's around somewhere.
We'll get there. All right? Okay, we're going to plow ahead just because I know that you all have exciting and wonderful things to do this afternoon. Right, so this workshop I created the week after Bishop Buddy's well-known sermon back in January, and offered it at Trinity, Iowa City, because I happened to have a visitation that week. And so I'm going to imagine that maybe some of you watched that sermon online, and I'm talking about the whole thing, not just the very end, the whole thing. And if you didn't have the opportunity to do that, I highly, highly recommend the whole sermon. It's really wonderful. And that one little bit at the end where that's the part that got shared so much on social media, like that's great and everything, but it's really helpful to have in context. And so what struck me, come on, pen, was that we have, I think, that we, as the church, have a call right now to be prophetic. And what is that? And how do we do it? Because being prophetic is not just going out and making a lot of noise. Because what you saw was Bishop Buddy being very prophetic, very quietly, in her own context, in that also very odd context of that prayer service, right? And so how do we be a prophetic church? And then bring it down a little bit, how to be a prophetic congregation. How to be a prophetic congregation. So, if you watched that full sermon, and find another color of pen. I got a lot of black pens. We'll just use black. If you watched that sermon, and I know it was a long time ago, and you remember anything about it, what do you remember about it at this point? Was there anything surprising, or is there anything that you remember?
The word mercy.
The word mercy. Yeah. Yeah. What else?
The emphasis on stranger.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
What I remember was how directly she spoke to President. Did she initially, or just at the end? At the end. Yeah, right. But then it was clear who she was speaking to at that moment.
Yeah. And she actually said something like, Mr. President, right? I mean, there wasn't, yeah, you couldn't have missed that.
I don't know if this was in a sermon or from her book, but kind of a sense of protecting the Christian message from being hijacked or appropriated, as when Trump, the Bible up from St. John's and after clearing the streets.
Yeah, I think that was maybe more in the book. Tell everybody the name of the book, if you remember it. Yeah. Yeah, highly recommend. I was fortunate enough to have purchased it before the sermon, so I actually had a copy of it. Yeah, but highly, highly recommend. But yeah, so what I've written here is integrity of the Christian message, right? Yeah. Anything else that comes to mind? It was a long time ago. This is not a quiz. but these are the things that have stayed in your mind, right? Yeah. If other things kind of pop up into our minds, we will write them down. And this I'm going to, let's see, stick over here where we can still see it if we wish to see it. If I put it over this, we can see it. It sticks, it's like a giant Post-it note. I was somewhere else, and somebody had just painted their walls, and somebody was completely freaked out about touching the walls. But I didn't damage the walls. So, one thing that preachers are taught, and all you preachers here, you can check me, is that the words of the sermon are really only a small part of the experience of the people who are listening to the sermon, right? It is, in fact, the person of the preacher, and I mean more than just what the preacher looks like in the delivery. I mean the actual person of the preacher, the way they live their life, the way they are in the world, that is actually what preaches the most eloquent sermon. It's great to have really wise words and all that kind of thing, but a good sermon has to be authentic to the preacher. And Bishop Buddy is exactly who you see in that video. She is quiet, she is devoted, she is thoughtful, she is brave. As she preached, so what she was doing, and this wasn't one of the things that made it up there, because we were kind of going to the second level. The top level was that she was preaching about unity to a country that she could see was quite disunified, or however, whatever the right word is that, all you English teachers, I don't know what that word is. And she named 3 foundations of unity. She named honoring the inherent dignity of every human being, honesty in private conversation and in public discourse, and humility meaning awareness of our own fallibility, right? And as she did that, and as she lives her life, she demonstrated each of those foundations. I mean, it's been a joy as a part of the House of Bishops to get to know Bishop Buddy a little bit, because we go to these meetings together, and we, sometimes or whatever, in the lunch line together, right? Getting our lunch. And I mean, she lives the words she preaches. And that is why what she said that day was so powerful. And so the first thing I'm going to write down here is be authentic to who you are. Astute listeners will note that there was a little bit of a crossover between the sermon and what I'm saying today. That was unintentional, but Peter knew who he was, right? That was part of the Peter thing. So the second one, and there will be some discussion, by the way. This is not all just going to be me telling you. The second thing is be grounded in prayer. Which Peter in Acts also was. So, grounded in prayer. Cast your mind back to the beginning of this year, January. I know it's a really long time ago. But just before Jimmy Carter's funeral, which was before the inauguration, again, can you cast your mind that far back? Bishop Buddy was with me and a group of other Episcopal bishops at a contemplative prayer retreat in Schuyler, Nebraska. Schuyler, Nebraska is not where you go in January if you're really looking for a party. It's cold there. It was really, really cold. I say this to just underscore Bishop Buddy is a deeply, deeply prayerful person, okay? She is a contemplative, and grounded in that contemplative spirituality, that is the rock on which she has been able to build her public ministry as the Bishop of Washington, which is an absolutely unique episcopate in the Episcopal Church. So I'm curious, as you think about the word prophetic, right, and Bishop Buddy is prophetic, who else that comes to your mind who you think of as prophetic, and what is the prayer practice, if you would know, that grounds them? Or even just if you know of somebody you consider to be prophetic and who is grounded in prayer. Like, what examples do you have of that? William Marber. Say more about William Marber. That's not a name that everybody knows.
Yeah.
The moral majority, that is true.
No.
No, the clergyman from North Carolina who is on my seminary's board and Yale faculty, but he's the guy who came up with the idea of Moral Mondays.
Okay.
And leading another Poor People's campaign. So deeply committed to justice, and at the same time has a sense about him of depth that, I mean, I don't know what his personal habits are.
Mm-hmm.
But I can respect who he is more for how I see him behave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Recently arrested in the rotunda of the Capitol, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, was he one of those two? Okay.
He was praying in
Yeah.
the rotunda.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Any other? Can I write down his name? I can, but I have such a very carefully orchestrated set of papers that I don't know where to write it down. Oh my goodness. I'm going to write it over here. And I'm going to write it as Mel spells it for me. You said William, right? I know how to spell that. William. Thank you, and that's helpful because I heard a different last name too. I am familiar with him. Anybody else comes to mind?
He's a large black.
Yeah, yep. He walks with a cane. He has ankylosing spondylitis, or I pronounced that wrong, but I do.
You just mentioned Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter. Okay, say more about him as a prophet and a spiritual person. Mm-hmm.
Back in, when he was president, he put up solar panels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He talked about the problem of greed and people needing to think more of common purpose, not making greed or materialism their primary goal in life.
Boy, wouldn't that be a different world, right? So prophetic in the
Becoming more and more a part of the American.
yeah,
He was prophetic in that way because we've certainly become that way
right.
more so.
But his
Thank you.
grounding was that he taught Sunday school
Right.
every
Right,
Even
right,
if there's brain cancer scare and recovery.
right.
And to teach a Sunday school class, you have to prepare. You
Yeah.
have to really, and I'm sure expectations for his class were high, right?
Yeah, yeah,
He actually knew the Bible. He read, studied.
right.
You know, he'd say the Bible said more against divorce than it did against homosexuality or whatever. So.
Right, right. One more?
Well, the obvious Desmond Tutu.
Sure, we can go obvious, that's fine. Yeah, yeah. Say more about that.
I think of him because when he was for some reason in residence at General Seminary, I encountered him praying in the chapel. That's my example of his practice.
There he was, doing the thing.
But his prophetic commitment to the Faith and Reconciliation Commission in
Right.
South Africa as
Right.
in very risky ways putting into big scale practice forgiveness.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Remarkable. Okay, thank you. All right, so here's what I want to invite you to do. If you would kind of divide yourself, groups of 3 would be best, but if it happens to be 4, because that's how it goes, that works okay too. And share, just for a few minutes, what prayer practice is the most grounding for you? For you. And how do you, or how could you, prioritize that prayer practice in your life in such a way that you would be grounded in prayer, which is underneath here, for public witness? So I'm going to just give you maybe 5-6 minutes to do that in groups of, I think 3 is best, but 4, yeah. Uh-oh. Okay, everybody has a group? Okay, good. Bye. This isn't much to live stream, sorry. Okay, that's what they're doing. I guess in the for the folks who are, I mean, can you tell? Is anybody watching it right now? I would.
There's one group,
Okay.
people possibly watching.
Okay.
I record it.
Yeah. So for later, yeah, they can scoot past this part if they want to. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll send it to YouTube links of the service.
Okay. Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm proud of our live stream.
Good. Yeah. I think it's. I don't. I do not have the time to watch the live streams. I mean, very, very occasionally, if I have a specific reason. You know, I don't know what the percentage is. They don't all. And some of them do. So some of them, some have moved to, you know, a fancier setup like this. Others are still using somebody's iPhone on a tripod and somebody sits there and moves it around. And some of them either never did it or else they have stopped doing it.
We have like 530 followers.
Yeah, no, this is really good. Yeah. No, I think it's huge. And I think if you can make it happen, it's great. So where are your cameras anyway?
There. See that there by the top.
Oh, there it is, yep.
And then right above you.
Okay, yep. Where would the third one be?
That side.
Okay, and would it be, because,
So that way you could get this direction. That
yeah,
is that direction.
yeah, nice.
Yes. You
I was going to say, I can promise to not start again before you.
No, go ahead.
Okay, it won't matter.
Yeah, you're still on.
Okay. So all those live streamers are listening to me talk to you right now. They are so bored.
I find it interesting about one of the congregations.
Yeah.
I mean, I pushed for a long time to get it. And I guess if you want to do this, you got to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this is about a $10,000 system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mostly controlled by management partners to pay for it.
It's great.
We had planned to buy the third camera, but then we had to get an air conditioner. So now I'm trying to get some pledges from other people to get the,
I hear you. I hear you.
you know how it goes.
Yeah. Well, we'll start again in about 4 minutes.
Both of those reinforce each other.
Easy to follow after me. We get basically 4 stages every morning.
Oh, I know, I can't imagine.
Pay attention to going beyond this verbal this is the heart of the center.
I was gonna say, we're gonna sound like a bunch of old folks. Because I'm gonna say it's out in my backyard, because I love it. Well, yeah, so these are just there, but I always have a chance to focus on there are times when I pay attention to certain
I'm going to invite you to bring your conversation to an end if it's not that yet there. Just half a minute or so. when you're ready, help me to know that you're ready by kind of turning back around. Are you? Okay. All right, let's bring it on in, and you can share with one another in the larger group. What prayer practices did you talk about in your group? What did you?
We talked about running.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Running. Can you say more about that?
Sometimes when we run, we get out of bed and just take a break.
Okay, so running, taking a break. Run. All right. What other prayer practices? Good. You can. Please, John.
That she just said when we started.
Yeah.
Her mother said, "You know what grounded means?" And she said, "Yeah, it's when you've been bad and you get punished."
Right?
I would have thought the same thing.
We're using a different way of using that word. But yeah, that is a thing that can happen. Don't tell my children.
Well, I suppose it makes sense, though, if you've done something bad,
Get grounded, right? Good. What other prayer practices came up in your group? John?
You know, a lot of where my ideas come from is, I know, a very old book called Pray Always
Okay.
by Edward Hayes. And there are chapters on napping as prayer, eating as prayer,
doing the dishes.
walks in nature
Uh-huh.
as prayer.
Yeah.
You know, and I think so much of mine comes from just getting out and glorying in nature. I don't get to take a lot of walks anymore, but just soaking in the wonders of nature.
Unless it's scattering grass and
Okay. Great. Thank you. What else?
You know, I didn't say this in our group, but that makes me remember that at one point years ago, I was new to a church and talking with some people, and I said out loud, you know, my life is so busy these days that I pray in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is the one time, this is what I said, is the one time when I am still and alone.
Mm.
And an older woman in this group just said, pray in the shower. That's sacrilegious, basically.
Sure.
And now, when I'm in the shower, doing something sacramental that I do, and I think I came to that because of her reaction.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
years-long conversation saying, no, it's not.
Right.
Video in the congregation.
What is it
Sure.
that keeps me doing this?
Yeah.
You got to see me naked, right?
It's also it's the water.
Sure.
Oh, but I was
Yeah.
wondering if that was what her reaction was about. I don't know.
I think her reaction was that it was so mundane.
Yeah.
So mundane, not thinking, oh wow, I would have thought the opposite. She would have thought scandalous or
Oh,
something.
no, that's why I wasn't scandalous. But it was too mundane, not special enough for talking to God. And yet, I think that being bathed in water
Sure.
is very sacramental.
Yeah. Yeah, Lori.
I think of the comments that people made in our group and hearing other people. I think routine is the one.
Okay,
That
yeah,
It
yeah.
shouldn't be something like you have to consciously think. It should be something that you do so regularly that, you know, that resistance then gets sort of worn away. But it's just what you do at this time in this place.
Right. Becomes a habit.
Yeah.
rather than a special occasion.
Yes.
Right. The regular showers, which, nothing wrong with that. I just, right.
You're not very nice.
Contemplative prayer came on ours.
Contemplative prayer.
I just started thinking of humming over phrases that had special meaning. Given how good life can be, how good, or the Lord's my shepherd, I'm not want.
Now, you just used the word humming. Is there music in there as you're doing it? Singing. Okay. So,
I said that too.
yeah.
Humming, singing.
Yeah. Which is a little bit different from simply repeating the words over in your head, like, say, using prayer beads or something like that. But yeah. So I wanted to be sure I got what you meant. So I just put music, singing, humming. Should I put repetitive? Because it's the same thing over and over. The Lord is my shepherd.
To me, it recalls the meaning of
Yeah.
whatever that particular song was.
Okay. I'll leave it like that, and then we'll know what it means. Because this is just for us. Okay. Who else? Yeah.
I'm not sure what I call it, but my routine has been in the morning, get up and read the news.
Yeah.
And then, you get all agitated and pissed off. And so I've been trying to get myself to break that habit and
Yeah.
read something different, like I've been reading a book by Christian Lyman.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's a difference between, the news, which is all connected to the here and the now and what's going on,
Yeah.
and reading something that's more connected to a more, not eternal time, but a different kind of time to connect to, to kind of pull me out of this roiling morass of nasty stuff.
So would it work if I write spiritual reading? Does that work? Because I'm hearing two things. One is the nature of what you're doing, and the other, I think, kind of harkens back to what Lori said, maybe intentionally creating that routine of not doing the thing that gets you agitated. And yes, I resemble that habit, which I also don't like. It is not particularly spiritually helpful. Anything else that came up? Yes?
I also read a book that talks about healing words, and there are other books that I look at. And that takes my mind out of it. And I also stretch and that's, absolutely, if I want to move, it's an absolutely necessary routine.
Yeah.
So doing that, stretching, stretch your brain, stretch your body, stretch my spiritual awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also wake up very early.
Uh-huh.
Like really early. So, and I was saying to the group here, I go out, I have a patio, and I, for the first time, really gardening this year. So I'm out there with a notebook, and there is something about that, pre-dawn kind of moment that feels so powerful. So you feel so connected, I think, sort of spiritually in a way for me, I feel. And I do writing. I've had a lot of conflict in my life, so I'm really able to, husband's not dog doesn't want me to feed nothing. I'm out there, and I find that I can speak aloud too, because no one will, I'm not going to bother, or people aren't going to, or my dog, whatever. And so that's helpful for me. Sort of, in a way, praying as I need to for help in my life at this point. And this has been going on now for a couple of months. It's a really nice change of things. So I like to
Yeah.
I mean, I used to just go straight to my studio, and I realized that there's a lot of stress in my studio sometimes because I have a lot of deadlines. So I was reeling that back and trying to find a space before that, which is only a few feet away from where my table is out there. but, and I have, that's what works for me.
Yeah.
I think it's been helpful.
Thank you. So I just wrote down writing and praying out loud, which are both things that I heard, and it also kind of connects again into that routine piece. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to star the routine thing.
You can say a lot about creating what a prayerful practice that can be. I mean, I hope you're able to work through the stress and actually have the artwork actually be one of these practices. Yes, no?
Well, we'll see.
We'll find out. We'll get there. We'll get there.
I mean, I don't do it.
No, I know what you're
It's
saying.
creative
I
work.
know, yeah. I know, one would think so, wouldn't you?
Well, maybe that's if it's, your hobby and not your profession.
No.
So we've been talking about individual spiritual practices, right? Which is what I asked you to talk about. And so I'm curious, as you look at this, are there ways, because we're talking about how to be a prophetic church, right? How to be a prophetic congregation. Are there ways that you, as a congregation, could engage, or maybe already do engage, some of these practices more deeply together as a community? And your hand is up, and I completely missed it if it was there before.
No, two things.
Yes.
One, keep it simple. Prayers do not have to be some large, elaborate, you don't have to get the incense burner out, you don't have to get the gongs out, whatever. As a congregation, and I'm not sure how long this practice has been going on now, but we have a group of people that take turns writing the prayers of the people for the Sunday, which has been really quite amazing, I think. I mean, there's a lot of different voices from that experience.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, what else? Ways
I
that,
think we already use music and singing.
yep,
I think we already use music and singing as, actually the way it's used and woven into the service is a kind of deepening, and prayerful in ways that I have not experienced in other congregations.
great. What else?
We've gathered for Wednesday night simple suppers. I'm not the organizer of it. And then there's a program, and it was in one Benedictine service. And that is open to anyone. And that is we're all learning kind of a more contemplative style of worship. And it's great.
And very much grounded in that music. Yeah, Jane.
Another thing we do in worship, normally we didn't do it today, but after the sermon we have a period of silence.
Right.
And that was partially to bridge the gap. There are people who really like things to keep moving, and there are people who need more space in worship. So we're trying to experiment with ways to do that. But that seems to be more or less a good practice for us as together as congregation. And I think it does help us focus more on what has just said and how that might interact with our lives.
Yeah, we didn't do it today because I was here. So I plow on through. Do you have something that would be helpful for the community for prayer practices? Yeah, go ahead. Maybe don't leave trash out. That is a way to respect. That is a way to respect each other and the environment. Yes, yes, yes. Are there things that you, like looking at this list of personal prayer practices, are there things that you don't yet do as a community that might be interesting to experiment with as a community?
But I think you're kind of leading us out more into a public sphere, right?
Well, not yet. We're still grounded in prayer. So if you're going to go out in public with this, it would be some kind of a prayer practice that has to do with being in public. But we'll get there.
So
But
I'm trying to, kind of imagine how that would work, and, just people who come together and provide a presence at different things, like, of course, witnessing now as people are being detained and deported, or going to places where there are, protests against wage theft or whatever.
right.
But, kind of bringing the moral authority of the church in a prayerful way to these occasions.
And so I want to, I mean, you're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, because you can't bring the prayerful presence of the church out into the world if you don't have that truly prayerful presence yet. And so that's why we're talking about being grounded in prayer. And I have not done a lot of studying of the civil rights movement, but some of y'all I am sure have. The spiritual practices that folks would engage in before they would go out on marches or on lunch counter sit-ins, right? These were not just people who woke up that morning and then went and sat at the lunch counter, right? There was a lot of spiritual preparation. And so that's really what I'm getting at, because I think that we see action out in the world. We saw the video of that amazing sermon. We see people, going and witnessing whatever the thing is. We watch those videos of the people at the lunch counters back in the civil rights movement, or so on and so forth, right? That's what you see. What you don't see is that piece of grounded in prayer. And so that's what I'm trying to invite us to step into a little bit more intentionally and a little bit more deeply before we go out, right? Yeah.
I can think of two directions. One,
Yeah.
where we always have experience in this congregation, is the type A format.
Yeah.
Where readings are flexible. You don't have to stick with the lectionary.
Sure.
So the readings could be about something that is concerning the community. And simple songs and silence.
Right.
The other would be just introduce just a whole new element. I mean, I have a Tibetan Buddhist friend who is willing to teach meditation. And we would be willing to offer that as an ecumenical outreach. I find the Tibetan Buddhist teaching on how to meditate very, very easy to translate to Christian contemplative prayer and practice. And we could work with other groups of people in the community who have contemplative practices and do it with them and learn some of their tricks of the trade. And that's what Tibetan Buddhists believe their contribution to the world is their knowledge and experience on meditating and their ability to teach it to people.
Sure. So contemplative prayer is essentially, I think, what was at the heart of what you're doing. This is a Christian community, and so I would encourage you to be grounded in your Christian faith. I love Tibetan Buddhists.
Right.
I also encourage that.
Right?
Sure.
If I
Well,
say to my friend, I want to take this practice,
yeah.
and I want it to be a Christian practice, absolutely no conflict.
Right. Now, I understand, and I also do encourage, if you wanted to do something like that, you could probably find a Christian contemplative prayer who could offer that. I can offer you names, in fact, for that. Or I'm even capable of teaching such a workshop myself, if you invite me back. But that is part of one of the things that we need to do as the church. Remember what Peter did? He knew who he was. He knew who he was. And he knew who he was. Peter knew who he was, and he had those spiritual practices. And it was being grounded in those spiritual practices that enabled him, when God wanted to speak, to hear God, right? And because that was happening at the same moment with Cornelius, then they met and broke down that barrier. Or actually what they did was they recognized that God had broken down that barrier already. So I know that it's easy to kind of get broad in spirituality, and I want to invite you to go deep. I want to invite you to go deep in spirituality. And so that's why I'm saying that. I don't mean to cast any shade on you or your friend. Totally Christian contemplative prayer has got long and deep roots that go all the way back to the desert fathers and mothers. So explore them. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just thinking of Cindy talking about doing her exercises.
Yeah.
As sort of contemplative.
Totally.
And you talking about meditation with Buddhists. I'm wondering if there's some way we can combine exercise with contemplation. I'm thinking about Tai Chi, which to me is a very calming, meditative type of physical practice.
Sure.
I know a Tai Chi teacher.
Yeah.
I think it's fabulous. It's standing meditation.
Yeah.
It could be, no, it's powerful.
Again, nothing wrong with Tai Chi, and it's not exactly the same as a prayer practice that it's calming and meditative. And does it ground you in the gospel of Jesus Christ? Maybe there's a way of doing that. I don't know.
Well, does
Running can,
in
well,
nature?
so running was a suggestion from a friend over here. I'll tell you one thing that I do sometimes when I'm running. Forward Movement has a podcast of morning prayer, and I'll listen to that and pray along with it.
So what I'm saying is you can take something that you would normally think of as a spiritual practice, and it can be a spiritual practice, like walking in nature.
Yep.
Or taking a shower.
Or taking a shower. No, it certainly can. And again, I invite the intention of being grounded as a spiritual practice, because you can also take a shower and it's not, and you run and it's not, and you can walk in nature and it's just a nice walk. So, Brother James Dowd of the Benedictine Way in Omaha talks a lot about intention, and so I think that's the intention is really the key. Am I going for a walk because it's a beautiful day? Or am I going for a walk and I start at the beginning of the walk and saying, okay, God, I'm going to walk with you today. Show me what you have to show me. I'm listening. Right? Those are two different intentions. So I know I'm challenging you, and that's what I mean to do. That is, I'm doing it on purpose. I'm doing it on purpose. I think that contemplative prayer thing is a great idea. I think that Tizé, fabulous. Like if you did that all the time instead of just during one season, what might happen? Wow, that'd be cool. But Lori, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, please.
One of the things that we really could benefit from at Newsong is to share each other's stories more, hear each other's spiritual stories. You know, of challenges, of what has changed us, what has moved us. Because looking back on my experiences with this community, often that is what I remember the most, hearing people's spiritual journeys. And we could somehow make that more of a context for that. I think that would be good.
I love that. That's a great idea. That's awesome. And I wonder if that's something that you even need to wait as long as next Lent or whatever to do, or could you just do it? Look, I'll put it right here for now. Some places have like a nice wall to put it all right behind me, but this is a little bit more challenging. Back to Bishop Buddy, okay? Back to Bishop Buddy. And the ever-blessed list, which is down here somewhere.
I don't know, I can't remember if you said this, but do you know her personally?
I do, yeah. Yep.
We all know her. We've dined together.
Grounded in Jesus. Grounded in Jesus. Bishop Buddy's sermon was very specifically and very clearly grounded in Jesus. You may not remember this because it was such a long time ago, but it was specifically grounded in the Sermon on the Mount. Right? Okay, so this grounding in Jesus specifically, rather than in a generally progressive ideology, right, is what made that sermon so powerful. And it's also what exposes the pushback against it as very shallow and self-serving, right? Because the sermon was grounded deeply in Jesus, not just in, here's what I think we should be nice to each other, right? No, it's the Sermon on the Mount. It's the words of Jesus. So, having said that, I recognize that grounding what we say and do and believe and think, grounding it in the gospel of Jesus Christ is challenging a lot of the time for people who are progressive Christians. I'm raising my hand, okay? It's challenging for us. We are not necessarily accustomed to it. We may feel strongly that we don't want to alienate other people who may have different beliefs than we do. We may not know the gospel stories very well, right? We may not have learned them very well, or if we did, we forgot them. It can be challenging, and yet being grounded in Jesus is a key piece of being a prophetic congregation, key piece of what made Bishop Buddy's sermon so powerful. So, question for you, and this will just kind of popcorn it. What can a community of progressive Christians, in case you happen to know one, what can a community of progressive Christians do to ensure that our prophetic words and actions are firmly grounded in Jesus? There it goes. While you're thinking, I'm going to put that back up. That's okay, because you're busy thinking. See, that's why I didn't push it very hard. So what can a community of progressive Christians do to ensure that our prophetic words and actions are firmly grounded in Jesus? Lori.
I think part of it is to be reminded that we are part of a tradition founded on miracles. Like, it seems to me that part of what's so hard about political involvement is that it's so easy to turn angry and bitter and despairing. And by centering our action on Jesus, we, in a sense, have a lot more gas in our tank. That there's something fueling it other than just a human sort of action.
Right. In fact, while there are many good, just plain old human arguments to make that a person could make, and that would be fantastic, if we are going to speak as a Christian community, we have to speak out of that faith background. We are irresponsible if we don't. Or, I mean, we can go out and say anything we want to, right? Free country, so far, freedom of speech. But if we're speaking as the church, if that's what we want, if we want to go and be a prayerful presence or whatever, right? We can go and be a presence. We can go, we can be any kind of presence. But if we're going to be prophetic as the church, we have got to be grounded there. Yeah. What else? John?
I keep coming back to the notion of becoming way more scripturally literate.
Oh, preach, brother, preach. say anything more you wanted to say about that.
You know, there is a huge segment of what calls itself Christianity that is incredibly spiritually literate and has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus at all.
Right.
You know, and I think as we approach what is God asking us to do next as individuals or as a community, to know, to be more grounded in the words of Jesus
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
we are now is
Yeah.
incredibly important.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And not just in the words, but also in the example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Love, big thing, forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, feed the hungry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of back when I was a teenager in the more evangelical church, WWJD,
Uh-huh.
which really pertains to our church too. What would Jesus do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Instead of thinking,
That, right?
I'm scared about what's happening in society. What would Jesus do? How would he approach this? What would his response be?
Yeah.
And that's basically the Sermon on the Mount.
Right.
I think Bishop Curry, Jesus' example, no longer with us, of course, but he was a good example.
He is with us. He's just not the presiding bishop anymore. Let's just be really clear. Everybody on the live stream, May 18th, Bishop Curry, still going strong.
Challenging question about things that, they would think that spiritual people wouldn't want to talk about, like politics.
Mm.
He would bring it around to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
and literate. By the time it's finished, you were inspired. I remember still the guy from the British church when Harry married, and they were all just shocked. And he was actually giving them a sermon as well.
About the captive audience, like, we should read it.
Okay. Anything else? What can a community of progressive Christians do to ensure that our prophetic words and actions are firmly grounded in the gospel of Jesus Christ?
Oh, God, walk the talk.
Okay, say more about that.
Living as Jesus told us to live.
We could probably talk for another 6 hours about exactly what that means, but then we would have to order out for pizza. And yeah, at least bread and fish, right? But that's a lifelong challenge right there. Yep, yeah, yeah. Jim? Yes, yes,
okay.
sorry.
Following up on Dale.
Yeah, I want to hear more. Go for it.
Following up on Dale, and if we really take the idea of walk the talk seriously, there are going to be some people who think that the way we walk is because Jesus told us how to walk that way. And pretty soon anything we do is an excuse to say Jesus made me do it. So there's a sort of a dangerous risk of going too far with imitation of Jesus, being grounded in Jesus. You have to also have your own understanding of the world and use your own God-given brain.
Can you give me an example of what you're saying? Because it's not clear to me yet. I don't know, maybe they're, you know.
express ideas of prejudice of some kind and then try to justify it because there's a little piece in the Bible that says something.
Right. You're not going to do that, but somebody out there is potentially going to do that. Right.
Facing people who are so sure of themselves that they're going to trip.
Mm-hmm. And so how does that affect you as a community of progressive Christians seeking to be grounded in the gospel of Jesus?
I don't know how to speak to those people.
Aha.
That's the problem.
Right. So right there, that's a huge thing. You're not the only one in this room who doesn't know how to speak to those people, right? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. How do we learn to speak grounded in Jesus to other folks who also consider themselves? If you said, hey, are you grounded in Jesus? They would say, yes, I am, right? How do we learn to do that? And Natalie has her hand up. Are you going to tell me the answer? I hope so.
I don't have a great answer, but I think that just goes back to what John said of just becoming more scripturally literate. You have to really know and really understand what God is saying to be able to counteract what is being said against you.
Yeah.
So what I'm writing down, Jim, and we can all just know that this is a shorthand, is learn how to speak across difference. Because, I believe in Jesus. I believe a lot of the same things that those other people believe, but I look at it and from a completely different direction. And so how do we say that in a way that we can invite hearing on both sides? We can't control whether somebody else listens to us, but we can control whether we come across like a steamroller or not. And Jerry's going to tell us all of the solutions that we need.
No.
Dang it.
I'll tell you my own personal experience recently.
Good.
I brought into Chicago to see the Frida Kahlo exhibit at Art Institute. Came outside, a group of young men with sashes and some other stuff. And I thought, this will be very interesting, I'm sure. And I get accosted about the transgenderism of American teens, how we have to protect them. And I was not at all spiritually literate at that moment. All I could do was hand it back and say, you're so full of it. I did use a Christian term a couple of times and just walked away. And it just made me so angry that there are people out there that are that brainwashed. Right. And how do you come across as being literate and not brainwashed yourself?
Yeah.
But it was, that was a new one to me.
And you know who comes across as being literate and not brainwashed?
Yeah.
Well, no, they sound brainwashed to me. Bishop Curry, Bishop Buddy. Not that all of us are going to turn into those people, but you can. They have shown us that you can speak from a very explicitly Christian place into the wacky stuff and come across as literate and not brainwashed. Now, there's going to be somebody out there who's going to say, right, didn't they pass a resolution or propose a resolution to censure Bishop Buddy or something like, right? Because, there's always going to be those people, and that's not going to change.
At the moment, it was the fact that it was after you walk away, you think of the perfect thing to say.
Right.
But I was so insulted that I couldn't even do anything but I kept my temper. I could have blown my temper big time.
That may have been the best thing you could do at that moment, was keep your temper.
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
The difficulty too comes in when you speak your truth or something like that, not getting involved in arguments or telling them they're totally wrong.
Yeah, keep your temper.
Keeping your temper. They are wrong.
But they will start quoting scriptures and you don't.
Misquoting, so better would be misquoting scriptures.
Let's keep going.
Seems to me one other thing we
Yeah,
need
go ahead,
to
Mel.
do is talk with each other about the scriptures.
Yeah, that goes to that scriptural literacy. Yeah.
Talk within the community. We don't do that much.
That might be a spiritual practice that y'all could do together. Yeah, there you go. Grounded in reality. Grounded in reality. Bishop Buddy made it very clear in her sermon that she was grounded in the reality of the current political life in this nation. Back at that moment, she knew what was going on. She made it very clear. She stated, remember back to the sermon itself, she stated the ways that unity is challenged in this country. She even used the phrase, it's a lot to pray for. We pray for unity, it's a lot to pray for. She named the outrage industrial complex, which is something that I think people on various sides could agree exists. Some of us believe the outrage industrial complex is on one side of the political spectrum. Some believe it's on the other side. And I see regular examples in my social media feeds of both, right? Yeah. So everybody could agree on that. And that is part of the reality in which we all live and part of the reality that she was grounded with. She also referenced the selflessness of first responders in time of natural disaster. Again, something that we can all see and agree with, right? So, question for you, what are some of the ways that you at New Song ground yourselves in the reality of your community? And by community, I open the door, that's what I'm talking about, right? Let's start local and then move further out. So if you watch CNN, that's like not how you ground yourself in the reality of your community, that's how you ground yourself in the national reality. How do you ground yourself in the reality of your community? Jerry.
Well, New Song is blessed in a lot of ways with an amazing congregation of activists. In this room, there's any number of people that are involved in various, from immigration people to nature and ecology and all that. But we're really a group of individuals that really do go out into the, at least in my belief, go out into the community to support things that are important to them. But it's always done in the name of New Song, I think, it's immaterial. But, I mean, I even know that, like John and some projects that he's been dealing with at Oakville that go outside of the community, like the rainbow graduation thing that the University of Iowa canned because of the pressure from the political aspects, but the Oakville community took it on for those kids to have that opportunity. There's just any number of us that are very active out in the community doing things. Laura's part of the Open Heartland group. It's a community that's very active in the community.
Yeah, and how do you share that amongst, within the community of New Song? So like if I were to just show up, how would I learn about all the different things that everybody is doing? Because that's how I would be grounded in the community. Emily, and then Natalie.
Community hour is big, and Josh Moe, who was here this morning,
So when you say community hour, is that like after church?
Right.
Okay, got you.
Usually the eats are pretty good,
Yep.
and people come and chat.
Yeah.
And Josh Moe is on the Iowa City, not the Portland, Iowa City City Council.
Yeah.
And that's when I get a chance to ask him, not accost him over some city issue, but just ask him for information
Sure.
about something that's before before the council so that I can be better aware of what is going on with his ministry, which is to try to do a good job on the
Yeah.
city council.
So it sounds like what you're saying, there's sort of informal conversation where that will come up. Yeah, go ahead, thank you.
The bulletin board downstairs, one of my favorite things is if we're having an upcoming event or even potentially after an event, like we just this last week received a card of thank you and a note saying thanks for hosting from Inside Out for our team night. You know, we get those pieces of information out
Yeah.
on that bulletin board so people know what's coming up, what's important, what we're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Also
Great.
the newsletter.
Newsletter, okay, and that's a monthly email.
Spirit School.
Say more about Spirit School.
And it's often a chance for people who are involved in a particular ministry to say more about it and try to get others involved in it.
An opportunity often for outside people to come into Spirit School to tell us about their project, their program, in a kind of holistic way, maybe.
So I was curious about that because I was wondering if how you hear about things that you don't already know about. Would it be, right, as a community? Do you know what I'm saying? Go ahead, Jim, and then Jerry.
As an example, next Sunday after church,
Yep.
we're going to have a spirit school that focuses on trans youth, the problem of transitioning from one gender to another. And we're going to have a guest join us. And maybe Esther could fill in a little bit on that.
Well, I'm just a member of the trans community here in Iowa City, whom I know through my work with Inside Out.
Yeah.
Has agreed to come and be kind of the main speaker, and Nancy has agreed to be moderator for it.
Great.
And I think it will bring us into more conversation with the next generation of trans and gay community.
Okay. Yeah.
I think Zaria Rochester, our speaker, will be really informative to everybody.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
One of the best ones recently I find, because I'm headed that direction, was spirituality and aging. And we had people from various aspects of that community, which I didn't realize, I had primary care physicians, a gerontologist, the people from the, I can't even pronounce that, there's several different projects in Iowa City that I wasn't aware of. They were very beneficial about what people go through as they age out.
Yeah.
And as you look around, you know where a congregation is on that path.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Many of us have a love-hate relationship with the announcements,
Mm.
but after
That means you must be an Episcopalian.
because they can go on and on. But after the service, we do have an announcement time. The camera is turned off
Mm-hmm.
so that things can, illnesses can be shared. But a lot of it is just people informing the congregation about something they are deeply involved in and telling us when their event is or what it is.
Yeah. Anything else anybody wants to comment about on how you ground yourself in the reality of your care?
Someone who
Yeah.
started this too, but we were involved in helping refugees for a while.
Mm-hmm.
We adopted a Ukrainian family, 2 generations, and that became a 2-year project. But before we did that, we had a spirit school, and we all talked about things we do
Mm-hmm.
provide to the family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Combined effort turned out to be a baby shower for the young bride.
Aw.
Yeah, so there were a number of people working with different agencies that all serve immigrants, and some of us weren't aware of the other agencies.
And so that brought you all together.
So we make our announcements.
The painting on the far wall, the flowers, is from the Ukrainian family.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Thank you. right, we're going to move along because we're very close.
What about nourishing yourself?
Yes, well, the Wednesday night, once a month, the last Wednesday of the month, and I've gotten some ideas for, thank you all, you'll hear about them.
There we go. Grounded in hope. Bishop Buddy is grounded in hope. So when she spoke, she preached in the National Cathedral, her cathedral, from her pulpit, in that unique context. She made her plea to the President of the United States, the most powerful individual in the world, on behalf of some of the most marginalized people in our society, and in particular, those he had already pledged to do harm to. And she did this not because she necessarily thought that she would persuade him to change his mind in that moment. She is not naive at all. She did this because her hope is in the living God who invites every one of us into transformation at every moment, and even those who are demonstrating hardness of heart to the vulnerable, right? Bishop Buddy knows that God acts in the world. That is the hope in which she is grounded. And so that was how she was able to speak those words in that place to that individual, which have been so powerful. So, how to be a prophetic congregation. Be authentic to who you are. Be grounded in prayer, grounded in Jesus, grounded in reality, grounded in hope. And we can close with the prayer that Bishop Buddy used to close her sermon. Let us pray. May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and to walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people, the good of all people in this nation and the world. Amen. So I know you're not going to keep all of these Post-it notes up on in your worship space, but I am going to leave them for you to do anything with that you would like. I know that they will make an excellent kindling.